Hello, you. Jennifer here. You sent us some really thought-provoking material this time. It's all about procrastination, and how we can actually break free from delaying the things that really matter to us.
Yeah, it's a big one.
So our mission for this deep dive, inspired directly by what you shared, is to get a real handle on why we put things off and, more importantly, to find some clear ways to start moving forward.
Exactly. What struck me about this material is its understanding of procrastination. It's not presented as just a simple lack of willpower, right?
Right.
It's treated as something much more intricate, often tied to our emotions and how we respond to challenges. It's really about digging beneath the surface of that delay so we can build, more effective strategies.
Okay, so let's dive right into this core idea then. The empty cup. It's this powerful image of our potential, all those goals and dreams, just kind of waiting to be filled. But then we often get caught in what the text calls the trap of someday. We keep thinking, I'll start when things are perfect, or maybe when I feel more ready.
The trap of someday, it's so relatable, isn't it? That almost universal feeling that, like, the stars need to align perfectly before we can take that first step.
Totally.
But think about it. How often do those perfect conditions actually materialize without us, initiating something? That novel we want to write, the skill we want to learn, they often just stay in that someday category forever if we don't actively pull them into the present.
Absolutely. And the story of Eli, the old clockmaker, that really resonated with me. He spends his whole life crafting these beautiful timepieces for other people,
All right.
but never finishes his own, the one called the moment, because he was always waiting to the ideal time to complete it.
Yeah.
And his eventual realization, I kept waiting for the moment. I never realized the moment was waiting for me. Oh, it's kind of a punch to the gut in a good way.
It really is.
It makes you think about what unfinished clocks we might have in our own lives, That pursuit of perfection, it seems, can just delay progress indefinitely. Eli's tragedy wasn't a lack of skill, was it? It was more like a paralysis of anticipation.
Exactly. It beautifully illustrates how the perfect moment isn't something we just stumble upon. It's something we create through our willingness to just begin. The text even includes that Tony Robbins quote, "The path to success is to take massive, determined action."
Right, which really throws a spotlight on the contrast between being proactive and just passively waiting. But what's encouraging, I think, is that the text emphasizes that massive action doesn't necessarily mean this huge, overwhelming leap right away.
No, definitely not.
It often starts with something much smaller, right? A single, maybe even imperfect step.
Exactly. And to understand why we often struggle to even take that small step, it's helpful to consider the psychology behind it all. The material you shared suggests it's frequently rooted in fear. Yeah, fear of not measuring up, fear of failure, and even, interestingly, a fear of what might happen if we actually succeed. It can feel safer, in the short term, to just avoid those potential discomforts by staying put.
It's like procrastination becomes this weird form of self-protection, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like an umbrella we hold up even when the sky is clear.
That's a great way to put it.
We're shielding ourselves from potential rain, but in doing that, we might be missing out on the sunshine.
And what's fascinating here is the invitation to consider, what might happen if we dared to step out from under that umbrella, even if it feels a little risky? What opportunities, what experiences might we be unknowingly shielding ourselves from? This leads us right into the first key lesson the material highlights. Movement creates momentum. Think of it like pushing a really heavy stone uphill. That initial push takes the most effort, right? But once you get it rolling, it becomes progressively easier to keep it going. Inertia is broken by initiation. Even the smallest action generates forward motion, kind of defying how difficult we thought starting would be.
That analogy of pushing a stone really hits home. It's that initial friction, that feeling of resistance before we even begin that can be so off-putting.
Totally.
But the text rightly points out that just starting a task often demands more mental energy than actually continuing or finishing it. Think about those times you dread going to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
But once you're there and moving, it's usually not so bad. Or staring at a scary email inbox. But after you reply to that first message, the others seem less intimidating.
Exactly. That feeling of mental friction before starting something difficult, that's what the text calls the resistance point. It's often just a manifestation of our underlying anxieties about the task itself.
So the advice is pretty practical then.
Yeah, very practical. Break down that big, scary task into the tiniest possible component. Just write one sentence of that report. Make that single phone call. Just put on your workout shoes. By lowering the barrier to entry to something almost negligible, we kind of bypass that initial resistance and make it much easier to begin.
Okay, that makes sense. Then the material tackles this other common belief that we need to wait for motivation to magically appear before we can act.
Right, the motivation myth.
Yeah. And it completely flips that script, explaining that often it's the act of actually engaging with the task that ignites motivation.
This is such an empowering perspective shift, isn't it? If we perpetually wait to feel like doing something, well, we might be waiting forever.
Right.
The idea that we can actually cultivate motivation through the simple act of starting is incredibly liberating.
The text even touches on the practice of Zen masters, how they focus intently on the present moment, even in mundane tasks. It suggests that this kind of mindful engagement with what we're doing, rather than focusing on what we're avoiding, can be a powerful way to break the procrastination cycle.
And Brian Tracy's quote here is particularly impactful. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today.
Oof. Yeah, that one hits hard.
It really connects procrastination to a larger sense of accountability, By delaying tasks, we're not actually making them disappear. We're just pushing that responsibility into the future, often making it feel even more overwhelming when we eventually have to face it.
And I found the metaphor of the garden that waited too long so vivid. The idea that we can have all the best intentions, detailed plans. But if we keep postponing the act of planting, we ultimately miss the growing season.
And the opportunity is just lost. It's a powerful reminder of the potential cost of inaction.
It truly is.
And the suggested practice is so accessible. Choose one thing you've been avoiding. Set a timer for just 5 minutes and commit to working on it for that short burst. No pressure to complete it or achieve perfection.
Just start.
Yeah, it's about creating a small crack in that wall of avoidance, like tapping on ice to see where it might break. Just like the garden missed its Saturn, we can miss opportunities if we wait too long. This is a simple way to break that cycle.
And it's so important to remember, as the text points out, that struggling with procrastination doesn't mean you're fundamentally flawed or lazy.
Absolutely not.
It could just be a sign that you're feeling overwhelmed or facing some hidden fear, or maybe just lacking clarity about the next step.
Right.
Offering yourself compassion in those moments rather than harsh self-criticism can actually make it easier to take that initial small step. As the text beautifully reminds us, even a river starts as a drop. It highlights the significance of those seemingly tiny first actions.
Which seamlessly leads us into part 2, this idea of the weight of the keys and actively taking back control of our lives. It's a natural progression, really. From understanding the inertia of procrastination to this more empowering concept of personal responsibility. The shift here is significant. It moves from analyzing the reasons behind our inaction to actively reclaiming our agency. The metaphor of holding the keys to our own lives is incredibly strong.
And the story of Tomas and the locked door is such a powerful illustration of this. He spends years feeling restricted, believing this hidden garden is totally inaccessible, only to discover he had the key in his own pocket the entire time. It really makes you reflect on those areas where we might be waiting for external permission or some ready-made solution, when the power to unlock the situation actually lies within our own hands.
Yeah, it highlights how often we can feel powerless when, in reality, we have more agency than we realize. We might be looking outward for answers or solutions when the ability to move forward lies within our own choices and actions.
So the text defines personal responsibility not as like assigning blame.
No, not at all.
But as consciously choosing our responses, claiming our inherent power, and recognizing ourselves as the authors of our own narratives. It cautions against surrendering that pen to external circumstances or other people.
That image of being the author of our own story is so crucial. When we avoid responsibility, we essentially give someone or something else control over our narrative. Claiming responsibility is about reclaiming that authorship.
And the metaphor of the captain in the storm brilliantly captures this. We can't always dictate the external conditions, the turbulent weather, the unexpected challenges, but we always have control over how we steer our ship, right? Our response to those circumstances. Responsibility is that steering wheel.
Exactly. So, if responsibility is our steering wheel, how do we learn to grip it more firmly in our daily lives? The text then guides us towards.
Well, it reframes responsibility not as this heavy burden, but as the very instrument that enables us to navigate those storms effectively.
Right. The text suggests that avoiding responsibility can often stem from feeling overwhelmed by pressure, but it beautifully reframes it as the ultimate freedom, the freedom to initiate change, to learn from our attempts, and to just keep moving forward.
It's the bridge, as the text says, connecting our present situation with our desired outcomes.
Exactly. And the emphasis on how small, consistent decisions shape the trajectory of our lives is so practical. We don't need to overhaul everything at once.
No. And the prompt to pinpoint one specific area where we might be subconsciously waiting for someone else to step in, or where we're actively avoiding making a choice, and to really identify what we're secretly hoping will magically fix itself. That's a profoundly insightful exercise in self-awareness.
It really is. Just writing those things down can bring some much-needed clarity.
And the story of Lara, the designer feeling stuck in her career, perfectly illustrates this. It wasn't one grand sweeping action that changed her path, was it?
No, not at all. It was a series of small, manageable steps she consciously took, updating her portfolio, acquiring new skills, actively applying for different roles. These small acts of ownership ultimately led to a significant career shift.
Lara's story is a great example of how taking ownership, even in small ways, can build momentum and lead to meaningful change. It reinforces lesson 3, the power of ownership.
Which is all about stopping the blame and starting to build.
And the examples provided are so relatable, shifting our internal dialogue from "they made me feel this way" to the more empowering "I chose how to respond," and reframing "I don't have time" as the more truthful "I didn't make time." It's about taking an honest inventory of our choices and recognizing our own agency in shaping our experiences.
It's fundamentally about acknowledging our active role in our own lives, not from a place of self-approach or guilt, but from a position of empowerment. This kind of honest self-assessment, the text rightly points out, is the very foundation upon which self-trust and lasting confidence are built.
The reflective question posed at the end of this section is so crucial. What are you choosing today?
Yeah.
It brings into sharp focus the reality that every single day presents us with choices, and even inaction is in itself a choice. We are constantly navigating between growth and stagnation, courage and avoidance, proactive engagement and postponement.
And the gentle practice suggested taking a few moments before sleep to reflect on any responsibilities we might have been avoiding during the day and simply noting them down without judgment. That's a powerful tool for cultivating that sense of ownership and awareness.
Awareness is key.
As the text wisely states, awareness is often the very first step towards taking leadership in our own lives. It all comes back to the story of Tomas and the profound realization that he possessed the key all along. We are far more capable and possess greater inner resources than we often give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely. And that brings us neatly to part 3, which delves into the fear of not enough and the liberating truth that imperfection is not an obstacle, but often the very pathway forward.
Perfectionism.
Yeah, it tackles the deeply ingrained notion that the desire for a flawless outcome often lies at the heart of our procrastination.
This is such a critical point. That intense need to get everything just right can be incredibly paralyzing. And the quote the text shares is so true and so freeing. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
That quote really cuts through the noise, doesn't it? We often find ourselves waiting for this mythical, perfect moment, or for some future version of ourselves that we deem ready before we feel entitled to begin.
Right. But the reality is that growth, mastery, and even that feeling of greatness emerge directly from the act of starting, not from some prerequisite state of perfect preparedness.
The story of Leo, the painter, who dreamed of creating a masterpiece but never actually started because he was consumed by the fear that it wouldn't measure up.
Oh, yeah.
And how his blank canvas, his potential, just deteriorated over time. It's such a poignant and cautionary tale. His intense fear of imperfection didn't prevent failure. It just manifested as a different kind of loss. The loss of opportunity, the loss of creation.
It beautifully demonstrates how perfectionism can lead straight to stagnation. We become so hyper-focused on avoiding any potential flaws or missteps that we inadvertently prevent ourselves from ever bringing anything into existence in the first place.
Yeah.
The text rightly points out that perfectionism is often just a sophisticated form of fearing being seen starting small, forgetting that every significant achievement, every remarkable creation begins with those initial, often messy steps.
And the text makes a crucial distinction. Perfectionism can often masquerade as productivity. All that meticulous planning, the endless research.
Right, it feels like you're doing something.
It can feel like we're making progress, but but it's often just a subtle way of avoiding the inherent discomfort and vulnerability that come with actually starting the work and facing the possibility of making mistakes. Ultimately, this form of productive procrastination yields no tangible results.
And the metaphor of planting in the rain is so vivid and effective here. Waiting for absolutely ideal weather conditions to plant our seeds might mean we completely miss the growing season.
Yeah.
Imperfect action taken now, even amidst less than ideal circumstances, is almost always more fruitful in the long run than waiting for a flawless moment that may never actually arrive.
Which perfectly leads us to lesson 4. Action builds confidence, not the other way around. We often operate under the assumption that we need to feel a certain level of confidence before we can take action on something. But the text compellingly argues that it's the very act of showing up and doing, even when we're riddled with uncertainty, that actually cultivates and strengthens our confidence over time.
Think about any skill you've ever acquired, right? You weren't an expert from the outset. You developed proficiency and belief in your abilities through consistent practice, through navigating trial and error.
Like learning to ride a bike. That example is so apt. You don't wait until you feel completely confident. You get on the bike, you might wobble, maybe even fall a few times.
Probably fall a few times.
Yeah. But through that process, your confidence gradually grows.
And the real-life example of Jordan and his imperfectly launched podcast is so encouraging and relatable. His friend's insightful comment, "You're not trying to be perfect, you're trying to be bulletproof," that really reframes the entire goal.
Bulletproof, I like that.
Yeah. It shifts the focus from achieving some unattainable ideal to building resilience and just putting something valuable out into the world, even if it has a few rough edges.
Jordan's story highlights the idea that authenticity and a willingness to be imperfect can often resonate far more deeply with people than a highly polished, but perhaps less relatable facade of perfection.
Absolutely. It powerfully underscores lesson 5, the critical importance of progress over perfection.
So instead of constantly asking ourselves, is this good enough? The text wisely advises us to shift our focus to a much more productive question. Is this a step forward?
Such a simple shift, but so powerful.
That subtle but significant change in perspective, from striving for some abstract ideal to focusing on tangible forward movement, is absolutely key to overcoming procrastination. It encourages us to break down those large, intimidating tasks into smaller, more manageable steps, reading just one page of a book, solving one small part of a larger problem.
Perfection can feel like trying to scale a massive, insurmountable mountain all at once.
Yeah.
Whereas progress is about simply taking the next step on a clearly defined path.
And the introduction of the 80% rule offers such a practical and immediately applicable strategy.
Yeah, the good enough rule.
Aiming for something pretty good, rather than obsessively chasing that elusive 100% perfection, can be incredibly effective in overcoming that initial inertia and actually getting things done. Think about that email you've been putting off a version that's 80% complete, and sent is far more valuable than a 100% perfect draft that just stays unsent in your outbox.
So true. Done is often better than perfect.
And the text importantly normalizes failure, reminding us that it's not the opposite of success, but rather an integral and often essential part of the entire process. In fact, it states that the only true failure is the failure to even begin.
That reframing of failure as a learning opportunity rather than some definitive endpoint is absolutely vital for breaking free from the paralyzing grip of perfectionism. It grants us the permission to take risks, to experiment, and to learn from our missteps without the crushing weight of expecting flawless execution right from the start.
I particularly appreciated the phrase, "let it be ugly first."
Yeah, I like that too.
The analogies of a dusty initial blueprint, a rough first draft, a teacher maybe stumbling through their first few lessons. They all serve as powerful reminders that virtually everything begins in an imperfect state.
It's that initial, sometimes awkward start that lays the groundwork for all the refinement and transformation that comes later. It's a powerful reminder that we don't need to have all the answers or be at our absolute best to take that first step. The very act of starting, even when we feel unprepared or inadequate, sets the stage for growth, learning, and eventual improvement.
And the final reassurance offered in this section, "you're already enough," is such a beautiful and crucial message.
It really is.
We don't need to achieve some arbitrary external standard of perfection before we are worthy to begin pursuing our goals. As Arthur Ashe so wisely said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
That quote perfectly encapsulates the core message of this entire deep dive, doesn't it?
It really does. It's about embracing our current capabilities, acknowledging our inherent worthiness, and taking action with the resources we have available right now, rather than waiting for some future, idealized version of ourselves or our circumstances to magically appear.
Exactly. It's about shifting our fundamental mindset from one characterized by avoidance and fear of imperfection to one grounded in engagement, acceptance, and a commitment to continuous growth. It's about recognizing our own inherent agency and the remarkable power of consistent, even if initially imperfect, action.
So to kind of bring it all together, we've explored how taking that first step, no matter how small, is really the key to breaking the cycle of procrastination.
The inertia breaker.
Yeah. We've looked at how embracing personal responsibility empowers us to take control, and how focusing on consistent progress is far more effective and, frankly, sustainable than chasing an often illusory ideal of perfection.
Definitely more sustainable.
Ultimately, this isn't about trying to fix some perceived flaw within ourselves, is it? It's more about remembering and reconnecting with the capable and resourceful individuals we already are.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a mindset that values learning and growth over flawless execution, recognizing that every journey, no matter how grand, begins with a single, often unsteady step.
So as you go about your day, maybe consider this. What single empty cup in your life are you feeling ready to take the tiniest step towards filling today? Just one small thing. And what if that seemingly insignificant act was, in fact, the most significant and transformative step you can possibly take right now?
Powerful question.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.